Well, good afternoon, students. Welcome back to Sri Ramanuja Vidya Mandir, a temple of learning. We are back with our English class, and today we are getting along with the grammar class, that is sentence corrections. I've taught you tenses, I've taught you active and passive, I've taught you direct and indirect speech. So here comes the time to check how perfect our grammar is. Because generally there's tenses, voice, speech, all this, or you can say your question tags, subject verb agreement. I've completed all these chapters. So these are generally evaluated in your, not as particularly chapter wise, but all that grammar, whatever I have taught you now, will be evaluated or examined in the name of transformation of sentences or sentence corrections. Means whichever tenses I've taught you, and when you are perfect about the rules of the tenses, they purposefully will give you a wrong tense and they will try to spot out the error, or they will give a wrong question tag or a wrong voice or speech, and they will try to check the error and they try to and they ask you to correct it. So this type of questions is called sentence corrections. So you have sentence corrections in all your competitive exams as well as your board exams. So this is a very, very important part. Now, generally when I'm teaching you chapter wise, say for example tenses or a question tag or subject verb agreement or an active or a passive voice. Now, when particularly that particular part when you go with, you understand, yes, there must be a correction in the tenses because we are going with the tenses chapter. So there will be a mistake in the tenses and you will try to jot it out. Or if it is a question tag, only on the question tags area you will spectate. But now it is not that. Here I finished up all the entire grammar portion, and now I am checking you like how perfect your grammar is through some exercises. So now you have to check in the sentence a tense or a pronoun or all the parts of speech or the voice or the tags or the subject verb agreement. So where in which part of the sentence the error is, you first has to spot and then you have to correct it. So this is what is called sentence corrections. I suppose you understand, students. So the more you practice your exercises, the more you will be able to score. So I've just made a small PPT on this sentence corrections and we'll try to go for it. And today, instead of entirely posing on you all the this thing, I first wanted to concentrate on pronouns. Have you understood, students? I'm just concentrating on pronouns. So today, sentence corrections or finding errors. Anything you can say. Sentence corrections, finding errors. They may ask you a question like this or they may ask you a question like this. Finding errors. Now sentence correction, finding errors. Today we are only going to concentrate with pronouns. Using pronouns. So our concentration today is only on using pronouns. So here let us have a look into it. In a series of sharing sentence correction techniques, today I shall teach you how to use pronouns to find errors. So now we are going with a series. I've started sentence correction, and sentence correction is not a single record or a single this thing. You go with a multi number of practices. So every day or maybe whenever I find time, we will go with sentence corrections and we make it a series. You'll have a repeated records over it. Lecture 1, lecture 2, lecture 3, like that. So today in our lecture 1, okay, today in our lecture 1, We are going with what, students? We are going only with the pronouns. So it says, in a series of sharing sentence corrections or sentence correction techniques. Techniques means few hints, few easy methods. I plan to give it to you so that you will be able to get for the sentence corrections correctly. So sentence correction techniques today, I shall teach how to use pronouns and find errors. So before we could directly get into the exercise, I directly give you the questions and I ask you to find out the errors and find out and correct them. First, let us have a look into the pronouns. How many pronouns are there? The first one is personal pronoun. First one is personal pronoun. Of course, students, I've completed this personal pronouns previously. I've completed it when I'm explaining you tenses. Even before I could start tenses, I've completed personal pronouns. So, the pronouns that denote the persona and the things are called personal pronouns. So, what are personal pronouns? Whichever denote the personas or the things are called as personal pronouns. There are three kinds of personal pronouns. I finished telling you this already. The three kinds of personal pronouns are first person, second person, third person. First person, second person, third person. Now, what is first person? Instead of giving the examples like this, generally when I say, what is first person, students answer, I, we. That's what is written here. But let me explain you, students. First person doesn't mean I, first person doesn't mean we. But the first person means the speaker. What is first person? The speaker. What is second person? Listener. The second person is the listener. And then what is the third person? About whom we are talking about. You can say it's a topic or in the bracket whom we are talking about. Okay, already about I've written on top. About whom we are talking. Okay, so it is about whom we are talking. It's cleared up everything and left whatever we don't want. Okay. Okay, students. So, I write once again, first person is the speaker. Second person is the listener. And third person is the topic. Or we can say whom we speak about. So this is the personal pronouns. Now, without these three, speech is impossible because you need somebody to speak. I've explained you this previously also. Imagine I wanted to speak. I'm a speaker. Now, if there are no listeners in front of me and I'm just speaking in an empty classroom, people think I'm a mad lady. You sometimes see a person talking to himself on the road and walking, a mad fellow. So remember, students, whenever there is a speaker, there ought to be a listener. When there is a speaker, there ought to be a listener. Or say, for example, somebody is sitting over there, looking into the air, nodding the head, and as if he was listening to somebody, you think he's mad because you find nobody speaking there. So here, speaker and listener doesn't mean people. Sometimes your speaker can be a radio, a television, and somebody is listening to the radio, very emotional, they start crying, they start laughing. So the speaker over there, the first person is the radio and the second person is the person who listens. In the same way, if you are a speaker, you are the first person and your listener is maybe a dog. You are speaking to a dog, you are speaking to a bird. So the listener or the second person will be the dog or the bird and the first person will be you. So this is a first person and second person. Now coming up to the third person. Third person is nothing but the topic, students. I'm speaking, you're listening, and we don't have a topic. Blah, 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 blah. I'm going something like this. You don't understand what I'm saying. Where is the topic? See, when there is a first person and when there is a second person, there ought to be a third person because you ought to speak about something meaningful, right? So that's called the third person. The third person means a topic or whom we are speaking about. The examples are I, we. Whoever is speaking, they mention themselves as I, we. I hope you understand. People who are speaking, they try to mention themselves as I, if it is singular, we, if it is plural. Now it is second person. For singular and plural, you say you. So for both singular and plural, you use you. That's the second person. And when you're coming up to the third person, that means it's neither speaker nor the listener. It's about whom you're talking. So it is going to be he, she, it, they, or any name like Ram or something. So this is the third person. Now, till now whatever I'm explaining you is the subjective case. There are three cases, students, that is subjective, objective, possessive. Okay? And reflexive. We'll see what they are. How many cases are there? The first one is subjective case. The second one is objective case. And the third one is possessive case. We generally mostly use these only. Reflexive and emphasizing, I'll explain you afterwards. Now, what is subjective, what is possessive, and what is objective? Subjective, objective, or possessive. Now, say for example, we have a sentence over here. Say, he gave her, or you can say, she gave him his bag. Now this is the sentence. She gave him his bag. So she, probably she is some name. Okay. Say for example, Sita gave Ravi his bag. Means Ravi's bag. Sita gave Ravi Ravi's bag. So whose bag is this? This is Ravi's bag. So it's a possessive. So now we'll find out what is subject. Now you can see the sentence is divided into three parts, that is subject, predicate, object. She gave what? Bag. Whose bag? His bag. So you can see she is subject. Gave is predicate. Or you can say it's a verb. It's a predicate. Gave what? Him. Or gave whom? Him. So it is object. What kind of object? Indirect object. Gave him what? His bag. So bag is object. It is direct object. So all this I finished teaching you, students. Now my question is, she gave him his bag. What is she? She is subject. What is him? It is object. Now whose object is it? It is his object. So this is, it belongs to him. That means it is Ravi's bag. That means it is his bag. So his is possessive. So now you can understand she is subject. Him is, okay, here you have him, object, and his is possessive. So subjective, objective, possessive. Now did you understand? So she gave him his bag. Now supposing I say he gave her bag. Previous sentence, what did I say? She gave him his bag. He gave, and here I said he gave her. So she is changed into her. He is changed into him. Can you see? So this is subjective, this is objective, and that is possessive. Subject, it's subjective. This is objective, and this is possessive. Whose bag? Her bag. Whose bag? His bag. So now, when you are going with your personal pronouns, the example what is in the slide is only subjective case. So let us see subjective, objective and possessive cases for both the singular and plural of all the three persons, that is the first person, second person and the third person. So let us have a look into it. Now first we will go with the first person. First person singular and first person plural. What are we going with? We are going with the subjective case. Objective, possessive. We are going with the subjective, objective and the possessive. So first person singular, let us have a look into it. So first person is I. Now I will change into objective as me. I gave him, he gave me. So it's going to be me. Who? My bag. He gave me my bag. I gave him his bag. So the first person singular is I in subjective case, me in objective case and my in possessive case. Now look into the plural. Plural is we. Subjective case is we. What is objective case? Us. We gave them. They gave us. What? Our. They gave us our bag. So here you can see the subjective, objective and the possessive. Subjective, objective, possessive. Okay. So the first person singular is I, me, my. Plural is we, us, our. Now let us have a look into the second person. For both singular and plural students, it's you. You gave him, he gave you. Have you understood? So there's no change. I will change into me will change into my. We change into us change into our. But here, you has no change. You gave him, he gave you. So for subjective case and objective case and for singular and plural, for everything it is you only. But when it is coming to possessive, your bag. It is your bag. He gave you your bag. So, the subjective case of the second person singular and plural is you, your. Now coming up to the third person. Let us have a look into the third person. Now in third person singular, you have a masculine gender, feminine gender, neuter or common gender. And then you will have plural form. Have you followed, students? So we'll see what is the masculine gender. The masculine gender is he. Masculine gender is he. He will be changed in the objective case as him. He gave him. And in the possessive case, it's going to be his. He gave him his bag. Feminine gender is she. She gave her bag. So you can see, students, for the objective and possessive, it's only her. But when you're coming to neuter, it gave it. So there's no change. I gave it, it gave me. What? Its bag or whatever. Now for the plural, we actually have no place over here. For the plural, it's going to be they. They gave them. What? Their. So, subjective case is they, objective case is them, and possessive case is their. So you understand, students, this is the personal pronoun. I, me, my, we, us, our, you, your, he, him, his, she, her, okay, her or hers also, and then it, its, they, them, their. Next is reflexive. Okay, we'll have the reflexive next. Reflexive means reflecting. The reflexive pronouns are myself, yourself, herself, himself, itself, ourselves, yourselves, and themselves. So when we have a look into this, here you can have a reflexive pronoun, students. Okay. Now supposing we are going with reflexive pronouns. These are reflexive pronouns. Sorry. Now supposing we are going with reflexive pronouns. For I, reflexive is going to be myself. Okay, remember these are all personal pronouns. All of these are personal pronouns. But that is reflexive pronoun. Now, I is going to become myself. We is going to become ourselves. Plural form now. You is going to become yourself, if it is singular, and yourselves, if it is plural. He is going to become himself. She is going to become herself. It is going to become itself. And they is going to become themselves. Have you followed? So this is reflexive pronoun. So let us have a look into it. The reflexive pronouns are myself, yourself, herself, himself, itself, ourselves, yourselves, and themselves. A reflexive pronoun is used with another pronoun. Remember, for reflexive pronoun, you need another pronoun. That is, you need a subjective case pronoun. I, myself. We, ourselves. You, yourself or yourselves. He, himself. She, herself. It, itself. They, themselves. Or you can say also Sita, sorry. Okay. So say for example here, Ram, himself. Sita, herself. Dog, itself. So you can either use a noun or a pronoun. I suppose you understand, students. So when you're coming up to a reflexive pronoun is used with another noun or a pronoun when something does something to itself. Say for example, look into this example, Sita pinched herself. Sita pinched. You know what is the meaning of pinched? She pinched herself. So Sita pinched whom? Sita. Sita pinched Sita. So that is reflecting. Sita pinched Sita. That means she is pinching herself. So here it is reflecting. So that is why this is called as reflexive. Because it is reflecting, it is called as reflexive. Sita is pinching herself. The reflexive pronoun herself tells us that Sita did something to Sita. Sita is doing again to Sita only. So because it is reflecting, we call it a reflexive pronoun. But look into this example, students. Sita pinched her brother, or Sita pinched Ravi. That means Sita is not pinching herself, she is pinching somebody else. Then it is called not as a reflexive pronoun, because Sita is not reflexing herself. So whenever the reflection falls on the same person, I myself, I did it myself. Okay, I cheated myself. So that is called reflexive. I cheated my mother, then I'm cheating somebody else. I'm not reflecting myself. So it is not called a reflexive. There are no reflexive pronouns in this case. Sita pinched her brother, or Sita pinched Ravi. There is no reflexive. So I suppose now you can understand the meaning of this. Reflexive means the reflexive pronouns used with another noun and they reflex themselves. Next one is relative pronoun. Mostly relative pronouns are going to play the role of conjunctions. Okay, relative pronouns are that, which, who, whom, whose. We use it to give the description of a noun. Relative pronouns are used after the noun to identify it. Why do we use relative pronouns? To identify them. To identify it, we use the relative pronoun. So look into the relative pronouns. The man who invented telephone was an American. So here I have the man who invented the telephone. Who? The man who invented telephone was an American. So I am using this to relate this. That is why it is called as a relative pronoun. That's why it's called as a relative pronoun. Because it is relating. The word who is relating to the man. The noun is the man. The relative pronoun is who. The adjective clause identifies the man. So this is an adjective clause and it is identifying the man. Who? The man. When I ask a question who, it is man. The man who invented telephone was an American. Followed, students? So this is called a relative pronoun. So it gives more details about it. The man invented telephone. He is an American. So this is what actually the sentence is. Have you followed? The man invented a telephone. He is an American. Now I am changing it with using a relative pronoun. The man Okay, the man, comma, instead of saying both the sentences, the man invented a telephone, he is an American, instead of saying both the sentences, I say, the man who invented the telephone comma, is an American. So again, instead of using the pronoun he, I've replaced it with who. And so I'm relating the two sentences with what? With who. Since I'm relating both the sentences with who, it's called a relative pronoun. I suppose you understand, students. The man who invented the telephone is an American. Okay, was an American. The man who invented the telephone was an American. So now I suppose you understand the meaning of the relative pronoun. Can you see this? The man who invented telephone was an American. The noun is the man and the relative pronoun is who. I drove my car which now had 2 flat tires back home. I drove my car. This is also another example for personal pronouns. I, my. I drove my car myself. Subjective case, possessive case, reflexive case. Can you see? Anyways, now here we are talking about the relative pronouns. I drove my car which now had 2 flat tires. So when I was driving my car, I went to some place and by the time I returned, 2 tires has become flat. No air. So that is the meaning over here. The noun is my car. What is the noun? It is my car. And what is the adjective? It is which. The adjective clause tells us some information about it. So whichever car I am driving, that has become flat. 2 tires has become flat. So because it is describing the car wheels, we use which over here. And so it is relative pronoun. So have a look into these sentences, these example, students. Relative pronouns for people and things. For people we use different and for things we use different. For people we say who, whom. Who, whom refers to people, whereas which refers to things. Now we also have that and whose, which refers to both people and things. Say for example, I say, the car, I drove my car, that had 2 flat. So, I can use that for the car. I drove my car, that now had 2 flat tires. Or I can also say, the man that invented telephone was an American. So I suppose you understand. So that can be used for both nouns and for both people and things. So now you have a picture about the relative pronouns for people and things. Now distributive pronouns. You know what is the meaning of distributing? You're dividing, you're separating, and you're giving to everybody. You're distributing it to everybody. They are used for persons, individuals, or things one at a time. Distributive means you're distributing, you're giving, you're separating and giving. So what are the distributive pronouns? They are either, neither, each, every. You're distributing them. Either, neither, each, every. So whenever you see these 4 words, remember students, they are distributive pronouns. They are always singular verb. Subjective verb agreement. When I was explaining you students, I've used these words. Either, neither, each, every. They are distributive pronouns. And all these are always singular. So if at all a sentence come with the correction of sentences, subject verb in the correction of sentences, if you get a sentence that either of them are, it's spelling mistake or it's a grammatical error, it is. Okay, say, look into your examples, you will understand better. Each got a certificate for their participation. Each got a certificate for their participation. Now, whenever you're using, I've just now told you, whenever you're using a distributive pronoun, you ought to use it as a singular verb. Okay, so each got, because it is a past tense over here, you are not able to identify. Because it's a past tense, you are not able to identify the verb. This is past tense, past verb. But supposing I use present tense, I will say each gets. Each gets. Each gets a certificate. Each gets a certificate. Or supposing I use each one is going to get a certificate. Have you understood, students? So each will always take a singular verb. Is a singular verb. So remember, whenever you are using, of course it's a past tense, there is no difference between singular and plural, but when you are using present tense or future tense, remember you have to make a singular form. Okay, each gets a certificate, each one is going to get a certificate. So this is a distributive pronoun where you are distributing and the words are either, neither, each, every. Now in the next class, we will go with the demonstrative pronoun and the emphasizing pronouns, and then we will go with the exercise. Okay, students? So that's all we have for this day. Thank you. Have a nice time.